Hey, you probably don't need a full-size router like this. If you're new to woodworking or a casual builder, buying one of these just might be a waste of money right out of the gate. I bought this DeWalt 11 years ago, early in my maker journey. It's fine, it's nice, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just overkill for the type of projects that I do, and for the majority of its life, it's just collected dust. I've got this Festool router. Is it nice? Yes. Is it expensive? Also yes. Do I use it? No. This cordless Milwaukee is probably the nicest full-size router that I have. It collects dust. This is the best router that I use. The Humble Trim Router. I think I paid $99 for this with a battery on a Black Friday sale a couple years ago. I use this all the time. In this video, I'm going to share everything that I wish I knew about routers when I first started woodworking. I'll show you what to look for in a router, free and cheap jigs that are really easy to build so you can up your projects, router bits you should stay away from, router bits you probably never heard of, and the easiest, weirdest way to clean your bits. I know this is YouTube and it's the land of fake tool reviews. I used to be a tool review channel. I stopped doing that because number one, I didn't like making those videos. Number two, I wasn't really good at it. And number three, the whole sales commission affiliate game on YouTube kind of makes me nauseous. But since I own so many routers, I get asked all the time to do a video comparing all these trim routers to see which one is the best. Now let me ask you a question. Do you really want to see me do a video where I run all these on a 2x4, come up with some score based on how it feels in my hand, only to recommend the router to you that gets me the most sales commission? I didn't think so. In full transparency, I paid for every single one of these routers. Not one of them was sponsored except for this new one from Craig. Craig just gave it to me maybe 6 months ago to test it out. It's the only one that I did not pay for. So which of these routers should you buy and which ones should you stay away from? And the answer is pretty simple. You should not waste your money on any of these routers. This is the one, I'm just kidding. I got the cheapest router from Bauer from Harbor Freight. I think I paid $35 for this. And this is the most expensive router that I bought. I think with the batteries, it was about $400, a bit much. I've got the ones that you can buy at Home Depot. I've got Makita and DeWalt. I've got the typical ones from Bosch. And of course, the new one from Craig. So what's my take on all of these routers? I'm gonna give you the reasonable approach here. They're all fine. They all cut. They work. Now, are there some creature comforts and bells and whistles? Sure, but at the end of the day, if you want to rock the $35 one from Harbor Freight, it'll work. Now, it might not last very long, but it will work. Instead of telling you specifically which one of these will work for you, what I'd like to offer is a way of thinking about this that I think is a wise approach to making a decision. The first thing that you should consider if you're going to buy a trim router is, and this is where a lot of people mess up, does it have a plunge base option? Now here's the deal. When you're just starting out, you might not want or need or even know what a plunge base is. However, there will come a point in your projects and in your skills where you will want a plunge option. And it is entirely possible to buy a router where the manufacturer has not designed a plunge base. Now, if you don't care about plunging at all, that's totally fine, but you should know that so that you don't accidentally invest in the wrong router only to turn around and waste more money to buy a different one. The second thing you should look for is the motor brushless? Now, this isn't necessarily a deal breaker, but if you've ever used a brushless motor in a tool and then gone back to a brush motor, you can feel the difference. A brush motor is going to have physical brushes that work inside of it. They're usually cheaper. They're going to break down. They're going to cause more heat and friction. And generally, it's not good for the long life of the tool. A brushless motor is going to be more expensive, but there's going to be less wear and tear, less heat. It's going to be more power efficient. And at the end of the day, it's going to feel better and perform better. So if you're going to spend $100 on a router and one of them is brushless and one of them is brushed, you should know about that. Now, this is a luxury, but you should consider if it has a soft start and a fast break. A lot of routers don't have this, but if you've ever used a trim router that ramps up and then when you turn it off, immediately stops, it's just a more pleasant experience and it's safer. Now, these last two are kind of picky, but I think it's worth considering. And it's one, how easy is it to adjust the depth? And two, is it easy to turn on? I know that's kind of a funny thing, but I'll show you some routers that are a pain to turn on, and I wouldn't buy them if it was the only router on the market. I really wanted to like the Rigid, and it took me an embarrassing amount of time to figure out how to turn it on, because every router I have, you push the button, and I kept pushing this button, you pull it, and sometimes it doesn't work. And there it worked. The depth adjustment on this one is a piece of... There, see, it doesn't even work. That switch. Bad rigid, bad. Okay, this might make these manufacturers mad. We got Ryobi rigid, Craig, the corded Hercules, the cordless Hercules from Harbor Freight, the corded Bauer, cordless Bauer from Harbor Freight. To my knowledge, none of these routers have a plunge base option, which means that if you were to buy the rigid, you will never be able to use this in a plunge function. And it's kind of expensive. So if I were going to buy a router once, unfortunately, I would not buy any of these routers because at some point I'm going to outgrow what they can do. All of these routers from DeWalt, Bosch, Makita, Milwaukee, you can buy a plunge base for them. But let's eliminate some. The corded DeWalt is a fine machine, except it's brushed, but its cordless brother is a brushless one. This is the Bosch PR20. It's a standard go-to router. Nothing wrong with it, except that it's brushed. Its big brother has more horsepower and a brushless motor, a solid corded option from Bosch. Its cordless brother is awesome, but at $400 with batteries, it's kind of expensive, but still a solid option. And of course, Makita, solid option, it's brushless, and Milwaukee, solid option, brushless. My favorites, however, are these three. In my opinion, the cordless DeWalt, the cordless Makita, and the cordless Milwaukee trim routers are probably the top three trim routers on the market currently. The one I use most often used to be the Makita because I'm a Makita guy through and through. However, for the last couple of years, I've been using the Milwaukee more and more for one reason, and I'm going to show you. Now, even though I'm a Makita guy, there's two things I don't like about the Makita. One, to turn it on, you have to hit two buttons, unlock, and then turn it on. I never thought that the lack of a brake was an issue until I started using the Milwaukee. One button, and it stops immediately. And actually, it stopping immediately is my favorite feature for this. So if you are brand agnostic and you say, Drew, I want to buy the best router and I don't care what the brand is, in my opinion, being a Makita guy, this is the one you want. And I say that as a guy who actually owns two of them. I keep one in a plunge router ready to go, and I keep one in my oversized base. Now, when it comes to the plunges for these, I like how compact the Makita is. But when I got the plunge base for the Milwaukee, there's one thing that surprised me. Check this out. And this is completely personal preference, but when you plunge on this one, you plunge and then you lock in, which is fine. But on the Milwaukee, you have to unlock, then plunge, and then it locks in. And for whatever reason, I appreciate this style of locking over this. To me, it feels better to unlock, plunge in, and then let go, and then do my business. And if you zoom in, the depth stop is way more intuitive and easier to work, as opposed to this little guy that you have to screw down from Makita. In summary, if you could only get one, this is the setup I think you want. Now, the one downside to trim routers is the base isn't very stable because they usually have a small footprint. So if you've been paying close attention, I have these oversized schmedium style bases that we make on all my routers, and they do a couple of things. The first thing is it gives you more stability, and we have this soft touch knob for you to put your second hand on so that you can really control the router and be safe. In addition to stability, we've also engraved center lines on this, so it makes it easy to lay out lines. You know exactly where that router bit is going to hit. You can't use bushings with this base right here, and so we've made it to where these are guide bushing compatible, which is pretty awesome. But these guys make a lot of dust, and so we have developed this thing we call the trim vac, and it's a 3D printed chute made out of ABS glass fiber. They're impossible to break. They go on here, and without any special tools, you can attach this, if you weren't holding a microphone, with two hands in about 6 seconds. And you can hook a common dust extractor hose up to this. Doesn't have to be an expensive Festool hose. You can use a cheap Amazon hose. And now when you're doing flush trims or certain other cuts, you can collect probably 90% of the sawdust right at the source. And this is a really cool idea. But the main reason why I made this was I wanted to save space in my small shop at the time. I didn't have room for a big router table, so I wanted to make a base that could drop into a sheet of plywood. I could clamp it onto my workbench, and I could have a very simple router table that I could just drop this in, do a round over, do a quick cut, and then I could take this out and continue to work. This base is not cheap. It is an investment, but it does all of those things to help keep you safe, keep you accurate, keep you from making too much sawdust in your shop, and give you the option to turn it into a router table. This is the number one thing that we make and sell on our website. And so if you want a discount, I'll put a link in the description below if you want to get a big discount just for watching this video. Okay, let's talk router bits. Here's a hot take. I would rather have the cheapest router in the world, a $35 Harbor Freight router with a quality router bit that costs more money, that was made with quality carbide steel, versus having one of the best routers in the world with one of the cheapest bits on Amazon that is not going to cut well, it's not going to last long, it's going to vibrate and chatter, and you're going to end up with a very bad cut. So if you're short on cash, what I would do, despite everything that I just said, is I would invest in quality bits and get a router that you can afford and then maybe upgrade later, instead of splurging for a great router and then buying the cheapest bits from Jeffrey Bezos. Ideally, you could have quality bits with a quality router, but if that's not on the cards, invest in quality bits and get a good router later. Here are 6 types of router bits everyone should have in their shop. The humble roundover. Now, most people go with a 1/4-inch roundover, and that's fine. It's just overdone in my opinion, and it's kind of out there in your face. So I prefer a more subtle 1/8 inch or a 3/32 roundover. It's subtle, and subtle is the game, my friend. Straight bits. I don't like straight bits. They're fine, but once you try a spiral bit, you'll choose spiral just for the smoothness of operating in your hand. When it comes to spiral bits, there's an upcut, a downcut, and a compression. You want downcut when you're using plywood, so it gives you a clean top surface. Upcut when cutting in hardwood so that you can remove material faster and eliminate heat. I'm lazy and I just use a compression, which is the best of both worlds. Ideally, you'd have a collection of all 3, an up, down, and a compression. But if you could only buy one, get a spiral compression. Everyone needs a pattern bit, and as you can see from the wear on this one, I use the 1-inch long pattern bit a lot, but ideally, it'd be good to have a short 1/4-inch length of cut, a 1/2-inch length of cut, and a 1-inch length of cut. But if you can only buy one, buy a 1/2-inch length of cut. You gotta love a good spiral flush trim bit. I'm sure you've seen these bad boys on the YouTubes. They're a beast and kind of scary. But the cool thing is you can also get a thin version for your trim router. However, I don't prefer them. They're fine, but I like to use this guy. It's a compact 1/2-inch spiral flush trim, and it's on a 1/4-inch shank instead of a 1/2-inch shank. Boom, you're welcome. This is the one to get. Admittedly, I don't use the glorious chamfer bit a lot, but when I do, it's usually for chamfering the dog holes in my bench just a little bit. I should use this more on table profiles. I think everyone should have one. This is a bullnose bit, and I'm late to the bullnose game because I've always thought it was more of a decorative profile bit, and I don't like decorative profile bits. But I recently used this to make some simple finger holds on some cutting boards, and I absolutely love it. I also used it in a fret radius jig that I'll show you later that I used to profile a guitar fretboard, and this rounded edge gave me a much smoother finish than if I had used a straight bit. So if you're just starting out, these are the 6 types of router bits that I think are worth investing in and building your collection off of. But wait, there's more. What about specialty bits? If you need to cut plastics, it's not a bad idea to have a good O-flute bit in your bag. This is a keyhole bit, which is used to make holes in the back of picture frames so you can hang them on the wall. I've actually never used it, but it's good to have. A lot of people trim laminate tops with a straight bit like this. I don't like doing that. A Laminate Pro turned me on to this bit from Freud, made just for trimming things like Formica. And the best part about this is $10. This is called a Collins bit. If you ever need to glue on like a hardwood strip onto the face of plywood, this is the coolest bit. It scoops out just a little bit of the plywood, which gives space for the glue to go while giving you a tight connection on the top and bottom. Most people don't know about this. I was really excited to discover T-track bits, where instead of buying your own T-track, you could route T-track into a wood surface, and I don't like them. I like using the micro jig dovetail bits instead. What I do is I use this straight bit to route out a channel, and then I come behind it with the dovetail bit that makes the dovetail groove in your piece of wood. I did this on a counter, and in my opinion, using these dovetail clamps with this dovetail bit is way better than buying T-Track. How to clean your router bits. I actually stole this idea from Mark Spagnolo over at the Wood Whisperer. He did a really cool video about it a while back. And I'll be honest, I thought it was kind of a gimmick at first, but I bought one and I've tried it and it totally works. I use warm water, a tiny splash of this stuff called Super Clean that I bought years ago. Not a lot. I don't even bother measuring out the ratios. I just kind of eyeball it. I drop the dirty router bits into the basket. I let it run for a few minutes just to let it do its wizardry magic. And after one cycle, it gets pretty close, but I found that if I take a cheap scrub brush and knock off any extra dirt, I can toss them back in for another quick cycle. And usually after that second cycle of maybe a minute or two, they are perfectly clean. Check out how dirty this water is just after running this for a few minutes. Now, I'm not 100% sure what ultrasonic cleaning does to coatings long term, so to be safe, I usually give them a light spray of WD-40 or a proper tool lubricant afterward just to keep the rust away, and I've been doing this for maybe 6 months. I have not had any of these rust, so I think it works. What I appreciate about this method is that it's simple, it's fast, keeps my fingers away from getting cut on these router bits when cleaning them, and it makes me feel like I have brand new router bits again. If you take a look at what these bits look like before I put them in the cleaner and after, it's pretty remarkable what this little machine can do, and it's super cheap. I'm all about easy tools that make a huge impact. One of my favorite tools that does that is a tool called Shopify, the sponsor of today's video. Shopify is an all-in-one business toolkit that lets you start and manage a business, both online and in person, without needing to know how to code. I use Shopify to sell our digital plans like this miter saw station or hardware-less cabinets, table saw jigs, and even STL files for 3D printing. And of course, physical products like this router base plate or our track saw accessories. Now, when I first began producing these, I had no idea how to build a store online or handle orders, and Shopify made it insanely simple to go from an idea in my head to a full-blown business shipping products around the world. Now, this is so cool. We recently passed 10,000 orders on Shopify. And without Shopify powering our business, we would have never been able to do that, and I wouldn't be able to make videos like this on YouTube. Shopify handles the heavy lifting, like inventory, payments, marketing tools, even a live view that shows real-time traffic, one of my favorite things, so that I can focus on designing new tools instead of wrestling with tech that's over my head. If you've got a product idea or a side hustle, start your free trial right now by going to shopify.com/wit, or just scan the QR code on the screen and launch the business that you've been dreaming about. Thanks, Shopify. One of the coolest things you can do with a router is turning a square like this board into a circle with a rectangle. This is my free trammel or circle cutting jig that I made. There are ones on the market that you can buy. Some of them, I think about $100. But my hot take is you really don't need those when you can make it for free. This is a cheap piece of pine. I planed it down so where it wouldn't be so thick, I could have planed it even more. But this jig could not be simpler to make. You put a hole on this end, and screw your router to it. You measure half the width of your circle and put a hole on this end. And using the same drill bit you used to drill that last hole, you drill a small hole in the bottom of the workpiece, put that bit in it, attach your trammel, and route counterclockwise. It's not complicated. The cool thing about this is you actually don't have to route all the way through, maybe a 1/4 inch to 3/8, ½ inch or so. Then you can take a jigsaw, cut off the rest of it, and if you have another pattern bit, you can reference the first cut you made by flush trimming the rest of the circle, a little bit of sanding, and there you have a circle. You don't need to spend money on a jig. I made this one to work with my plunge base for my Makita router. And the only consideration to make, and which makes this jig not free, is you might have to buy some longer machine screws depending on the thickness of your scrap, like I had to. But I think it was about $1.50 at the hardware store. So I still consider that free enough. Now, you could do this with a cheap one. I prefer having a plunge base on this. Makes the beginning of the cut much less sketchy, and I like having 2 hands on the router. And if you're worried about the hole that the drill bit makes, 1, it's on the bottom, no one's gonna see it, and 2, you could just plug it and patch it. It's gonna be fine. Oh, and one little pro tip for you, screw a hole at the top so you can hang it on your wall for storage. Here are two dado jigs I think everyone should have. This one is quick and dirty. I think I made it whenever I was installing T-Track on a router table that I was building, and it could not be simpler. It should take 2 minutes to make. Basically, take two long pieces of scraps. In this case, I put my T-Track in between so I get a perfect fit. And on the back side, I just glued and nailed these two strips to keep them together. Drop your pattern bit in, you're done. And costs no money if you keep some scraps around. Took 2 minutes to build and doesn't even need to be adjustable. It just needs to work. So if you ever need to create a data groove or inlay something like T-Track, you don't even need to buy plans for this. It's pretty simple. Now, I know some of you are a little bit more sophisticated, and so that's where we have this guy. This is an adjustable dado jig. It took me a little bit longer than 2 minutes to make, but I got plans for this from a creator named Sam from Monkey Boys Workshop. He's one of my favorite creators on Instagram. Brilliant dude. I follow him mostly because of his accent.
Merry Christmas, you ragamuffins!
I made this jig when I was making some coffee tables and I needed to do some half laps. And what's cool is I could put the piece that I needed to reference off of in here, close it up, lock the knobs down, and I was good to go. Super easy to make. I'll leave a link to the plans below. This next jig I've actually not built, but I want to do it soon, and it's also from Sam from Monkey Boys, and it's a chamfer jig that uses a trim router to put a really, really aggressive bevel on the bottom side of a curved round top. Super cool. I've always wanted to make a top with that level of bevel, but router bits like that really don't exist. So I never made this jig, but it looks super cool. It's too cool not to share. I think everyone should have one of these free or cheap router tables. This is a piece of 1/2-inch OSB. Yes, OSB. I sanded it super smooth. Obviously, plywood would be better, but I think I picked this up at the hardware store for maybe $3. You can trace your router base plate on there, screw some holes, screw your router, clamp this to a table, and you have a really, really fast router table to do roundovers, chamfers, things like that. I actually bought this router from Harbor Freight for $37. And if I take my plate off, I can screw it directly to this. And I've got an awesome dedicated router setup ready to go. Didn't spend a lot of money. Now, if you want to take it a step further, this is actually what I use most of the time. It's a 2x2 piece of 3/4-inch plywood. As you can see, it's got a little bit more going on. I made a video about this about 2 years ago showing you how to make a router table just like this. And the cool part is it uses the acrylic base plate that we make. So you could use this as normal. You could clamp this to some work surface, take the knob off, drop this guy in, use the knob to secure it to the work surface, and you're good to go. I have an expensive $3,000 full-size router table, and I use this 99% of the time. And for those of you who have bought our router base plate and not the router table kit, we actually sell an upgrade kit. So you can just buy what you need to upgrade to this router table kit. And that kit includes this 2-part acrylic template so that you can cut the recess for the plate as well as the full cutout to make it perfect. This hole right here, you use it to hang it on the wall, which means this router table will not only save you money, but it'll save space in your small shop. Okay, this jig is super niche, and probably most of you won't need this, but it's super interesting, and it's for those of you who build guitars. In case you didn't know, the fretboard of a guitar has a radius to it so that your hands can come around. There's lots of different radiuses out there, but the most common are 9.5 and 12 inches. Well, how most people do it is they take a block that's at that radius, and they sand for days. And it's not fun. So what we came up with was this jig where I could double side tape my fretboard down here. And then we 3D printed this trolley and attached skateboard bearings to it. And it rides on there perfectly. And then we have this carrier that's designed to work with my router base plate. And if I put a ball nose bit inside my router, I can then put a perfect radius of is 12 inches on my fretboard just by going back and forth. It takes about 2 minutes. But let's say I wanted a different radius. Well, here's a 9.5-inch radius. So if you're a guitar maker, this is pretty awesome. We actually don't sell this. We don't make this as a product because, I don't know, I'm not in the guitar business, but in the last video we did, we made a guitar from scratch and we just 3D printed this for ourselves. It's really cool what you can do with a quality trim router, some skateboard bearings, and a 3D printer. Admittedly, those are some pretty basic jigs and they're the ones that I use all the time in my woodworking. But if you want to go like a million steps deeper, there's this really cool trick that I'm going to show you. And it's called the Shop Notes Library. Now, in case you don't know, there's a magazine that went out of business or went out of publication called Shop Notes. I think they did issues from the early 90s to recently. This is not sponsored, not an affiliate link. I'm pretty sure they don't know who I am, and I don't know who they are. But last year I paid, I think it was $79 for a lifetime subscription to the entire catalog of Shop Notes, which was 149 issues. And these people are super smart. And so one of the cool things about this library is you can go in and type in, for example, router jig, and it'll pull up every page in their magazine catalog where they have produced router jigs. And these things are brilliant. So I know a lot of times we go to social media to look for ideas for solutions we want to solve, but in case you don't know about Shop Notes, consider checking it out because there are some really brilliant designs, especially for routers. This is a guitar body, obviously, but I want to show you a very cool way to remember which direction you need to route in. The general rule of thumb is if you're routing on the outside, you should go counterclockwise. If you're routing on the inside of something, you should go clockwise. But sometimes you can forget which is which. So I learned this trick from my friend Sedge, and it's create an L with your right hand. And if you ever wonder, is it left hand or right hand? Because your right hand starts with the letter R, and routers start with the letter R. And take your thumb and put it on the edge you want to cut. And whichever direction you're pointing is the direction that you want to route. Likewise, if you're going inside on this inside cut right here, I take my right thumb, put it there, and that's the direction. So every now and then I kind of forget, is it clockwise or counterclockwise? I remember just take my right hand, make an L, and the direction that my finger is pointing, that is usually, unless you got some gnarly grain, the direction you want to route. One last tip that's super important. You may be tempted to, when you buy bits, to throw away the packaging that it comes in, but don't. You should save all of your packaging because on the back is some very important information. The max RPMs that you should run your router. Now, most of the time, if you're running small bits, you can set it to the highest setting of your router, especially if you're doing things like plywood, softwoods, MDF, things like that, and you're gonna be fine. But the moment you start to get into bigger bits, especially with full-size routers, it is very important that you pay attention to the feed and speed rates because if you set this bit in your full-size router and you go full speed, it's going to be a pants changer. This box actually comes with this little bitty piece of paper that you should keep, and it's got some important numbers on the back which tell you, depending on how much you're cutting, the speed that your router should be going. So save this information. And speaking of this bit, this is why I still have a full-size router because I've got a project that I'm gonna do this year where I'm gonna use this and make handles on doors. I got this idea from Sam from Monkey Boys. This has to be one of the coolest router bits that I've ever seen. It's a beast, and it's why I still have my full-size routers. A lot of people ask me how much money I make on YouTube, and the truth is actually pretty shocking. YouTube pays me 0.0085 cents for every single view that I get on YouTube, which is not even a full penny. So if you're watching right now, I'm not even getting a penny from YouTube for this, which is fine. That's how it is. If this video gets 1,000 views, I made $8.50. If it got 10,000 views, $85. If it gets 100,000 views, $850, which is not nothing, but it's hard to do this sustainably. In a couple of weeks, I'll be on YouTube for 5 years uploading videos to the internet to help you guys out. And I didn't think I'd make it this long. But one of the ways that I was able to make it this long was I learned early on that if I was going to pay for this operation, I was going to have to create some type of a solution or a product to help people like me in their shops who want more out of their tools. And this router plate is one of the top sellers that we've kind of stumbled into. If you're on the fence about investing in one of these for your shop or anything else we make, just know we make all our stuff here in the United States. It is the main reason why we're able to make videos for free on YouTube. And we have the best customer service in the world. If there's ever an issue with anything, we'll own it. We'll take care of you. And there's nothing to worry about. All right, I'm done. I don't like selling stuff.